starting.
Oh, good.
So I think it's nice everywhere.
So look right at the camera. Hello, good evening. Happy Wine Wednesday. It's great to have you here. We'll get started in a few minutes. Let everybody log in. I hope you're all doing well out there. We're doing well here out in the Picnic Grove. Weather's nice. Okay. So let us know that you're there. Or if anybody has any celebrations or anything you'd like to do a toast to later, let us know in the comments, and we'll do our best to make that happen tonight. Aw. Hello, Florida and Piedmont. Sasha, hello. I can't read everything. Hi, Maggie. Thanks for joining. So hopefully you have your Angels Peak ready. We're going to be tasting the 2012 Angels Peak, Terlato Angels Peak tonight on this gorgeous spring evening here on the hill. The birds have come out, and it looks like we're finally getting some blue sky today for the first time, so I think it's in your honor. Hi, Marilyn, Nancy. We've got Pennsylvania and Nebraska. Hello. Oh, looks like we have a 90th birthday. Oh, fun. Mom, and now we have wind out of nowhere. So hopefully you can hear me okay. Oh, all the stuff's gonna blow. Mother Nature is talking to us this evening, which is awesome. Bumblebees. Wow, they're all saying hello. So, okay, so hello. We'll get started. Welcome to Wednesday. It's great to be here with you this Wine Wednesday in April. Marisa from Rutherford Hill, thank you for joining me in the Oak Grove. We look forward to welcoming you back to the winery, hopefully sometime soon. But when we get the call, please know that we will be welcoming you with open arms. So excited to see you. So we thought it would be a perfect opportunity to film this evening out in the Oak Grove. So it's a beautiful day. We've been so lucky and fortunate with our spring weather here in Napa. And I know personally I've been working more in the yard and the garden, and the vineyards are very happy. So rest assured, the vines are carrying on, and excited for this next growing season, so for vintage 2020. But first off, we'll get to our 2012 Angels Peak shortly. Want to mention our food sponsor today, as if those of you that have received the virtual wine tasting kits, that the pairing this week was the Stovetop Perfect Burger, and in lieu of that, this week we decided to pair it with Gott's Roadside. They have delicious food, and they are partnering with Feed the Line, which is an organization that is preparing meals for healthcare workers in the Bay Area. So feel free to join them and know that they are helping give back, and so awesome to support that. So it's definitely a local favorite for us over here in Napa, and I also know that John Terlato loves this place too whenever he's in town. So anyways, check it out if you haven't already, or next time you visit us, check out Gott. So perhaps you've made the perfect stovetop burger at home and you have your wine open and you're ready to get started. So also just a reminder that this is the third week of our 5th week series that we're doing of the virtual wine tasting kit that I mentioned. It is still available for purchase on rutherfordhill.com. You can buy the kit or individual bottles, whatever you like. It's there for you. The first week we tasted the 2016 Barrel Select, and last week we tasted the 2016 Cornero Chardonnay. So we will get started with 2012 Terlato Angels Peak, which is fun to talk about, and if you haven't had it already, I hope you love it as much as I do.
And one quick question from
yes?
Andy. He is asking about COVID and how it's affecting the vineyards, which you mentioned a little bit at the beginning.
Okay, so Andy. Okay, so Andy was asking a question about how this pandemic's affecting the vineyards. We are fortunate that the vines don't pay attention to the pandemic, so they are continuing on, and because the vineyards are outside, and our vineyard management company has taken precautions. They're wearing the necessary PPE and working. You can work rows spread out and still get the work done. So it isn't affecting us right now. Fingers crossed that it continues, that we're able to stay on track. So we are fortunate that we have enough help to get that work done. So rest assured. Okay, good. So for those of you that don't know who I am Marisa Taylor, the winemaker here at Rutherford Hill Winery. I have been here since 2004. Very lucky to work for the Terlato family, who purchased the Rutherford Hill Winery in 1996. It was a dream realized, is how we describe it here, for Tony Terlato to purchase and own a winery. And the Terlato family is very much, they have so much passion for wine, for the wine business, for wine, and their motto is quality is a way of life, and they definitely put that into action when they purchased the winery in 1996. When they purchased the winery, the 29 acres here on the hill, and volume of wine. But they did not purchase vineyards. So what did they do? They got started, they purchased some vineyard land, and they developed it. And we have actually 6 acres here on the hill, and then as well as another 60-acre vineyard down Valley Floor in Rutherford, and we also own a vineyard out in Pope Valley. So they really just got to work with vineyards first, and they also, if you've been to the winery, you've been on tour, you recognize the reserve room, which is another 24 fermenters that we have that was added on to the winery. So what I like to say is it gives me more pots to cook with, and really a great opportunity for us as a winemaker. It's awesome when you have more tanks to ferment with, is that you can really hone in on the different parts of the vineyard that you want to keep separate and then come back to and blend later. So very fortunate when I started working here that was in place, and an awesome tool for winemaking. And as we mentioned last week, we talked about sustainability, and that has been a movement that we have continued and started back in actually 2012 when we made this wine, when we put in our first solar array. So the Terlatos have been there for us to keep improving and making quality wine and premium wine, and really it's important for them to want to make this sustainable as a business and to give back to the community and the land, and to really make it a business that continues for generations. Tony Terlato, he has been in the wine business for 60 plus years, and he started off in a retail shop with his father, and through the years he studied, he educated himself about wines, and read up on them, tasted them, traveled, went abroad, and it was his goal, and I believe he's been very successful, his goal to bring great wines to the American table. Great wines, fine wines, great food, and onto the American table, having them side by side. And he's done that. If you're familiar with the category Pinot Grigio, you have Tony to thank for that one, because he brought it to America in 1979. So just a little fun fact of Tony Terlato. And he continued not just Pinot Grigio, but other wines that he imported into the States too. Wines from Bordeaux, Burgundy, Italy, all over. He would just go on these trips and seek out the best and bring them back for us all to have an opportunity to enjoy. So thank you, Tony, for that. And I just said again. So that gives a little bit backstory. My mom, just a little side note, I was practicing today, and my mom, I know you're watching, she made sure to let me know that I say a lot. So anyways, I think it's funny. So I'm trying to be aware, but anyways, sorry. Love you, Mom. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the support and the feedback. So that gives you a little backstory about Tony Terlato. And then for those of you, just to kind of remind you about Rutherford Hill, is that Rutherford Hill's legacy, if you'd like to call it, is people often know us for Merlot. And the founders of Rutherford Hill had also taken a trip to Bordeaux, and specifically Pomerol, and they had thought, you know what, the climate's similar to our vineyards in Napa, why don't we plant Merlot? So they did, and hence there it is. So Rutherford Hill was then known for Merlot, and we're actually, I believe we're the second, but we're one of the top 5 Napa Valley wineries that actually bottled a varietally correct Merlot back in the 70s, 1975. So you can see this parallel between the two. So we fast forward, now we're at 2000, we can say 2003, 2004. I come in the picture 2004. So, and we're just getting now to the wine that we're going to enjoy today is the Terlato Angels Peak. So when I started in 2004, I had the opportunity early in my career, I would probably say it was probably January of 2005, that Tony Terlato was coming to the winery, and Doug Fletcher, the director of winemaking at the time, and myself, we were going to sit down and taste through some wines. And it was the 2003 vintage, and we were going to taste to get an idea for this new project that I didn't know what it was. I was just there to taste and to listen, and really heard this passion from this owner, Tony Terlato, who was amazing, just his vision for what this wine was going to be in this project. He envisioned multiple wines, not just one, but to really pay tribute to his friends and just people he met in the wine industry in Bordeaux specifically. And so we tasted through and talked about, which wines we were loving, we loved them, but just which direction we were going to go. And the decision was to really start with Pomerol, because that is a Merlot-centric region of Bordeaux. And being a Merlot house, it just kind of fit, right? It made sense for us. So that's where we started. So in 2003 was the launch of the Terlato Angels Peak. Terlato, because ownership of Rutherford Hill is the Terlato family. And this was Tony Terlato's vision, was to make these wines. And so what better way to show that is by placing the Terlato name on the label. So this is the first Terlato wine that was made here at Rutherford Hill. And there was also 2 other wines that came to be. We had started with the Angels Peak, which is a Merlot-based blend. And then in 2003 and 2004 vintage, there was both. There was Angels Peak and Devil's Peak, which is a Cab Franc-based wine. And then you had the Cab-based red blend, which is the Cardinals Peak, launched in 2005. So 2005 is the first vintage that you'll have all 3 of what we refer to as the Peak series. So maybe lots of you out there have them, so I hope you enjoy them and as much as I do. So they're very fun to make, and yes, and take a breath here for a minute. Sorry, and take a sip of water.
Someone asked earlier what the other side accompanying the sweet potato fries is.
Oh, this one? Mm-hmm. This is Brussels sprouts. So we got some roasted Brussels sprouts today, and I don't really eat a lot of red meat, so I got an Impossible burger. And then we got some sweet potato fries. So you just do you. Just get whatever you want or make whatever you want, and hopefully, you enjoy it with that Angel's Peak tonight. So okay. So we'll talk about blending. So we talked about the 2003 is the first vintage, and then for this particular wine, which the great thing about this wine too, the label, is it does have the varietals on the label, so there's no hiding what's in there. So if I make a mistake, you can just check the bottle. But I always appreciate that it's on the label because I forget. But it's 69% Merlot, and we have 16% Cabernet Sauvignon and 15% Cab Franc. The vintage for 2012. If you've joined me the previous weeks, we talked a lot about 2016 and how that vintage was a near perfect vintage, is how we've often described it. 2012, funny enough, when I was looking back at my notes, 2012 is very similar. It's what we refer to as like a classic Napa Valley vintage. And it was really after our 2011, which I'm sure a lot of folks know about 2011, is that it was a cooler vintage. It was a very trying vintage. We had a lot of, I remember that 2011, we had a lot of moisture during set, and we had just had a poor set during flowering, and there was just a lot of obstacles, but still made beautiful wines. And in 2012, as a winemaker, the weather was great. We had a great growing season. Mother Nature was generous. We had great crop level, and the quality was good. So it was just, I think of that for myself personally, that I remember that moment during both vintage 2012 and 2016 where I just exhaled. Like I just had this sigh of relief, like it's going to be okay. Like it looks great. I'm excited. I mean, I'm excited every year, but you know what I'm saying? It just was this relief, especially in 2012, after the cooler vintage we had prior. And then in 2016, we were just relieved that we had more of a normalcy, not so much drought weather, even though it was still a little bit. But anyways, so 2012 vintage was that for me. It was also for us here at the winery. It was a year that we were putting in our first solar array. We were actually filming a documentary type style for winemaking behind the scenes that year during harvest. And we also lost our cellar master of 40 years that year. So at the end of September. So it was a very emotional year, and it also was just beautiful in the sense that we are family owned, and we are truly a family here on the hill with the folks that work here, whether you're in the cellar or wine club or the tasting room, grounds. We're just all one big family. Ugh. So I just wanted to bring that up because Tony Terlato had a lot of respect for Senior, and this wine, it came together. I didn't expect to get emotional, but I know that Tony would appreciate that too, because they had a lot of mutual respect for one another. So anyways, this wine is just very special to me. So with that said, I think we should try it so I can compose myself. So anyways, we'll get to this. So the wine comes in, we pick this fruit. I'll get back on my facts here. We pick this fruit. We sourced the Merlot from an Atlas Peak vineyard that we were working with. It's a beautiful vineyard. It was a little cooler up there, so it came in a little bit later than some of our other Merlot lots. So we picked this wine October 5th through 12th. And great vineyard for Merlot. It had just this like kind of, it was at above, an Atlas Peak, so it was high up here, and then it also had just this rolling hills with like some rocky texture, and it just, the Merlot from that vineyard was just beautiful, and that's what's in this wine. The Cabernet is actually from the hillside here, our Rutherford Cab, and then our Cab Franc is from our estate out in Pope Valley, which makes beautiful Cab Franc. So some really great wines to play with, to blend together. And once it's fermented, we go to barrels, and it is aged in our caves for this wine 20 months, so a little bit longer, in French oak, 100% French oak, and it's about 50% new oak, so a little bit more new oak than we do with some of our other wines. So that is the style that we're after. So shall we go ahead and taste?
And a question came in from Norb, if you could speak to how the taste profile of each varietal contributes to the overall.
Thanks for getting ahead of me a little bit. I was going to bring that up. Thanks, Norb, about how each varietal, what they contribute to the wine. Well, let's taste first, and then we'll chat. So I don't know. Let me know what you're tasting. If you're what kind of aromas you're getting. I do feel like there's a lot of fruit in this wine, and I think that's also very reflective of the vintage. And you know, it's starting to be, for me personally, I get a little bit of currant and a slight little bit of boysenberry, perhaps, maybe. And like a hint of, there's a spiciness to it, like too. There's a little hint of something there, whether it's cayenne or I also get a little cocoa.
And Marisa, Melinda commented that she loves and appreciates your passion for the Rutherford Hill family.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Melinda. And I don't know what you're getting on your palate. For me, you get a nice core, like there's a nice, I get cranberry or something. It's just really nice right there in the middle of my mouth. And there's a little bit of a, like baking spice or something kind of finish. There's a lingering finish for me. So I don't know, we all have different mouths and different saliva flows and all that good stuff. So we'll all taste a little differently. So let me know. But getting to the blending question, I would, an analogy that we were talking about earlier is that when you're making like pasta sauce, let's say this is pasta sauce. It's not pasta sauce, but if it was, you know, you have, for the red blend, we have this base, and the base would be the Merlot. So the Merlot it brings us this, it has volume, it has the cherry components for me that have now changed with a little bit of time. You know, you got that base, and then you bring in maybe you're going to make a bolognese sauce, and you're going to add some beef, so you're going to beef it up, but you know, or you can add vegetables or something for the texture and for some strength, some structure, because you know, Cabernet Sauvignon has this generous tannin that it brings to wines, which is an amazing thing about Cab. And then you've got the Cab Franc that comes in, and the Cab Franc for me is this finesse, and it has like the spices, like if you're going to spice up your sauce, you know, so it gives you a little bit of that to blend it all together. And that's how I guess, I hope I asked, that's what I think goes into the blending components from the different type of varietals. And so, and then the other analogy too is that, you know, depending on what the vintage is, or say, depends on when you pick the tomatoes from your garden. If you're making them from scratch, you know, you're pulling out stuff from your garden to make a sauce or a soup or something, that you're going to need to add different components to it to make it be just the way you want it, right? Sometimes you might need to add a little bit more salt or a little more, you know, seasoning, some other spices, but you know, every time it's a little bit different based on kind of what you're given. And that's kind of, that analogy is kind of what we apply when we sit to blend, and kind of when we're looking at a certain mouthfeel or wine.
Nancy asked how many Bordeaux grapes are used, or is it just the 3 that you mentioned?
Okay. Yes, for this particular wine, we just used the 3 out of the 4. So, yes.
And then we've got some answers on what people are tasting.
Okay, what are you tasting? I want to know.
Doug says spicy. Darla says spicy chocolate.
Nice.
Jim, coffee on the mid palate. And Victor, very dark chocolate.
Oh, nice. I love the, yes, all yes to everybody said. I heard spicy, dark chocolate, coffee. I use that too, coffee, a lot with my descriptors, or sometimes I feel like I use the term like espresso. Sometimes that's how it feels. Sometimes certain wines as a finish. But yeah, and I get mocha too sometimes. But yeah, awesome. Thank you.
And a question from Gary. Does your palate ever get dull tasting the wines?
Get dull?
And yeah, I feel like that could lead into the age.
Yeah. The question was, does my palate ever get dull when I'm tasting the wines? Yes, when you're blending a lot of volume of wines, you get what we refer to as palate fatigue can happen, and you just know you need to stop and come back. And that's why, for me, when the whole blending process is, it is a process. It's not just you sit down one day and go, oh, it's done. It's a come back to and make sure that that's really what you loved about the wine, or is it holding up the next day, and you come back and reassess it. And so yes, to that point. And then another thing I'll bring up is that last week, it's fun doing these tastings because you get to revisit the wines, and also it's just really great. So I thank you for joining me for doing this, because I get to revisit the wines that we made and that we love. And so we did a vertical actually of, well, not a true vertical. We did bookends. So we did the 2003 and then the 2015, and then we did some sprinkling in between, and tasted of the Angels Peak. And they are just tasting. They were tasting beautiful, and they were just very consistent with the style. Even though you'll see if you have some in your cellar that the blends are a little bit different, you can tell the essence of the blend is there. And so I would encourage, if you have the 2003, the 2004, and on up, but those were tasting really delicious. Like the 4 really stands out for me. 12 was tasting exceptional, which we're enjoying tonight. And so, yeah, I think that they'll go. I think this wine will. I mean, you could hold this easily another 5+ years. So, yeah. Is there any other questions? Making sure I talked about everything.
Sharon is asking, when blending, do you first make a small batch?
When blending, do I first make a small batch? Well, it depends on what wine I'm blending. That's the honest. Generally, with like if I'm blending the Napa Valley Merlot, which is our largest wine blend that we make, I usually look at things as like legs of if it's from a similar vineyard, is from the same vineyard, and it's similar attributes, and I love what they'll do together. Those will be like the smaller blends that make up the bigger blend. With smaller wines that we make for wine club wines, which they're a smaller volume, and like for instance for the Terlato Angels Peak, is that we do just one blend, and it's small, and we take sample bottles and we measure out proportional blends, and we revisit it, like I said, multiple times, and then once we sign off on it, and we really actually hold it over the weekend and come back the next week in a bottle and come back and retaste it, sometimes blind, and make sure that we love it, and then that's when we give the go ahead to blend it. There's always fine tuning that you can do, especially right before you bottle. Like we're coming up right now, we were just talking actually before this tasting about getting ready the 18 reds into tank, and so that will be kind of our little fine tuning there. But yeah.
And a follow-up question, Tim is asking, how long does the process typically take? Does it stretch over, like the blending process, does it stretch over months?
Okay. Tim was asking, if you haven't heard, that how long the blending process stretches over. It can be continuous. I feel like after harvest, to be honest, you'll make decisions about blending certain lots to then hold tight, and then the actual sit down, like we're getting ready to sit down and blend. That'll probably be over a process of, I would say, over a month. Actually, it's not a quick process. And when you're starting off with, say, 80 different lots, and you have to, figure out where they're going to end up going, it's a process. And you're we talked about palate fatigue. You're not going to hunker that down in one day. No way. And then be happy with what the result is. So, yeah, it's a process. And then again, I think we look at where we're reevaluating how things are tasting after being blended. I have a secret. I always keep a few barrels. I keep barrels out so then I can add them back in and kind of fine tune where I want them to be. If something after being in barrel for 6 months, how it changes. But it's great because the wines, when you're blending something like this, that you're putting the different lots together as they marry, that gives them time to marry and really show their expression.
And Jessica's tasting the 2012 and the 2013 side by side.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Fun. 2012 and 2013. What do you think? Do you have a preference of which one you love?
In the meantime, Jim has asked, what's the most satisfying part of being a winemaker?
Jim has asked, what's the most satisfying part of being a winemaker? I think for me, it's working with a team to make something, right, and to grow something. So for me, it's about the ag component with the blending and just being part of a team to produce something that you then get to enjoy with your family and friends. So that's what it is for me.
Do you have a favorite peak wine?
Do I have a favorite peak wine? Well, I love them all. It's just like if I had more than one child, but I only have one. I have a most memorable one is the 2000, which I don't think we have anymore. The 2007 Devil's Peak for me was probably my standalone, like, just one of those wines that you made that you loved. That was it. But I love all my wines. I love all the wines because you come back to them and you see how beautiful they are and how they're aging and developing and changing, and it's just pretty amazing that again, getting back to the team of people behind what brought this glass right to this tasting, is there's a lot of hands that touch this wine, and it's just amazing that you can make something so beautiful. So, and I do think there was a toast in there. There was a happy birthday to somebody.
Oh yeah,
A 90th happy birthday.
Um,
She's getting me the name. I missed it when it went on the feed.
and in the meantime, Brienne says that while tasting with the burger, it tastes more of cab flavors, but now finished tastes more of the Merlot flavors.
Nice. Okay. Oh yeah, I didn't talk about food pairings. That was what I missed as we're you know, I talk about every week that it's a personal preference on you know, what your palate is, what you like to eat. I know Merlots and like Merlot-based blends tend to go with a lot of braised meats, chickens, roasted, braised and roasted. So like you could do roasted vegetables, pasta, and all that good stuff.
So there's a question from Victor, very important.
Oh, Victor.
They need advice on how to keep the wines in cellar instead of drinking them.
Oh, how do I keep it in cellar without drinking them? I don't know about that one. Put a lock on it, give it the key to somebody else. I don't know. And one of the other little fun facts about Tony, getting back to Tony Terlato and food and wine, is that he was really adamant about that combination too, that they put in a commercial kitchen so they could bring folks to the business and show them how fine wine would complement their food at their restaurants or at home. And so he is kind of the original foodie in that sense. So I think that's another little fun fact about Tony Terlato. So.
The documentary series you referred to earlier.
Yes.
Can you repeat the name, and do you know if people can watch it now?
Oh, somebody asked about the documentary series. It was called Vintage Napa Valley, and it was a PBS six episode series that followed myself and then Elizabeth at Chimney Rock and Kim at Markham during harvest. And I know, last year I think it was even on one of the airlines it was running. So I don't know, check out PBS. Maybe do a search. That would be, I don't know.
Okay, one last question from Lynn.
Okay.
Says, does age matter in how fast you need to drink a wine after opening it?
Okay. Does age matter of how fast to drink? How quickly? So once you open it, how quickly you drink it? Yes and no. I think sometimes it will matter, but not always. I mean, that's a really nondescript answer, but I think if you just get to see how it evolves. So I actually do that with younger wines, is that when I taste them, if I have a bottle, and I'll put it in and I'll come back and keep tasting it to see how it's going to continue to age. It's kind of how I always use that little tool to think, oh, this wine's going to hold up. I'm going to get some more and stock it away. Or maybe, I don't know. I think if it's tasting good, you should drink it, and you can hold it for a couple days. But yeah, usually the older wines you want to drink more quickly, I guess, would be my short answer to that.
And then we want to invite people to start giving us their suggestions.
Oh yeah. So the other thing before we leave you this evening is that we really would like to get your feedback and also suggestions for the next virtual tasting pack, what you'd really like to have in it, what you'd like to taste, what you're wanting to have during these times, so, or just any time. So let us know, comments, and let us know. We'll take it into consideration for sure for the next tasting pack. Okay? All right, so I just want to say thank you so much again for joining me here on the hill. It's a beautiful day, and I really do believe that the clouds have cleared for you, because it's the first blue sky that I've seen all day long. So thank you for joining me. Cheers until next week. Be safe.